What he's saying is that he will do nothing.
I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law.
While facing increasing pressure to change his strategy, President Joe Biden has finally moved ever so slightly in his fight for abortion rights. And I will show you, largely spend the time in this video discussing why it is not nearly enough. But first, I do want to show you what this change is. So up to this point, he has been unwilling to say that he wants to see a carve out to the filibuster to, at the very least, codify abortion rights into law. Well, he has now changed his mind on this topic.
We have to change, I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law. And the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action to deal with the Supreme Court decision.
All right, so shortly I will get to comments from Justice Correspondent for The Nation, Elie Mystal, who I think, in my opinion, is right now one of the most brilliant legal minds and communicators out there on all these topics. He is just fantastic. I'll get to more on him in other videos as well, as he had a few recent appearances that are just amazing. He really is a fantastic communicator on these issues. But before I get to a couple clips there, so Biden has changed. Okay, he's now willing to support a carve out to the filibuster to ensure some basic human rights for women. Good. Well, worth pointing out here that a bill to codify abortion protections already passed the House. Failed in the Senate, of course, because of the fact that you need 60 votes. With a carve out to the filibuster, you could pass with just the 50 votes plus VP Kamala Harris. So to do something now on a carve-out to actually codify abortion rights into law. And again, I will get to why that is not nearly enough. But to do this bare minimum thing, you would still need people like Joe Manchin on board willing to support that carve-out. Now, in the past, they have supported a carve-out when it came to raising the debt ceiling. Back in December, they had a carve-out for the filibuster to raise the debt ceiling. So when it comes to, ensuring that their stock portfolios remain intact and keep generating income for them, they're perfectly fine for that. But when it comes to protecting human rights, it's a little tougher for people like Joe Manchin to jump on board. But it's going to become even tougher now as 82-year-old Patrick Leahy needs hip surgery after falling in his Virginia home. Unclear how long he'll be out in the 50-50 Senate. Senators are on recess next week as well. His office notes he was born blind in one eye and has had a lifelong struggle with depth perception. So now they don't even have the 50 votes for the foreseeable future. But, maybe this is part of the calculation. Biden saw this and was like, well, it's not going to pass, so now I can come out and support this. In reality, though, he doesn't have the votes. So, and if he's going to tell people to come out and vote, if that's his only strategy right now, that appears to be his only rhetoric, that go out and vote. Well, go out and vote. Why? If you're not going to get 60 senators, that's not going to happen. At best, maybe 52 in the midterms. Why would you need 52 over 50 when functionally it would be the exact same thing unless you support a carve out to the filibuster and hope to get around Joe Manchin with 52 senators. So now that he's out in support of this carve out, there now is a reason for him to say, come out and vote. That said, that is not the answer, the only answer. There's a lot more to this, as I will get to. But quickly here, I want to show you Elie Mystal's reaction to this news from Biden saying, oh, look, Biden said he wasn't open to changing the filibuster to pass a federal abortion law. People loudly complained, and now he's changed his mind. Funny how that works. It's almost like telling elected officials do what we want them to do, makes them more likely to do it. Now, I will say this is not usually the case, but it can be the case, especially when it comes to issues where, let's be honest, where capitalism doesn't come in the way. So, if this is an issue about corporate power, then it's a lot tougher to change the minds of every politician, including Democrats, when it comes to something as basic as women's rights. Yes, with enough pressure, you can actually maybe get some Democratic leaders to actually be willing to fight somewhat around the edges. And that's what we're seeing now with Joe Biden when it comes to codifying, or the support to codify abortion into law with a carve out of the filibuster. Now, before I get to the next clip, my administration will do everything in its lawful power to fight back against the devastating decision overturning Roe v. Wade and to protect the fundamental rights of women. Now, Congress must take action. I will show you right now how this is a lie. He is lying. Biden remains opposed to court packing despite Roe reversal. Court packing is within Biden's lawful power. You had, at the very least, 2 Supreme Court seats stolen from Democrats. Merrick Garland's seat stolen, that the Republicans restricted the court for a year. Why can they restrict the court to 8 seats, but you can't expand it? They restricted it for a year, stole that seat from Obama before Trump came in and had his pick. And then at the end of Trump's term, they rammed through Amy Coney Barrett a few weeks, like a week before the election. So there's 2 seats right there that should be Democrats. Not to mention, somebody mentioned this earlier in my live stream when I was covering the EPA ruling from the Supreme Court, that Bush didn't really win in 2000. So you can argue his picks as well should be Democratic picks. And there hasn't been a Republican that has won the popular vote since Bush's second term, but before that, I think it was the 1980s, Reagan or maybe Bush Sr. But still, you have here the majorities vote for Democrats, both when it comes to the presidential election and when it comes to the Senate. I mean, the Senate is ridiculous. To have 2 senators represent a place like Idaho, Wyoming, and then 2 also represent massive states like California, New York, California, the entire population of Canada. Like, it is completely insane to have just 2 senators for both. But this is how the Senate operates. So you have millions of more people supporting Democrats, yet when it comes to actual power, Republicans essentially are the ones in power right now. Even though Democrats hold the White House and hold Congress, you have this extremist right-wing Supreme Court doing what they want, overturning abortion rights. This is just in this term. They overturned abortion rights, made prayer or allowed teachers now to lead public school classes in prayer, overturned restrictions on conceal and carry firearms. That was overturning or a case with New York. They overturned that, overturned Miranda rights, and today, as I covered in a live stream, handicapped the EPA's ability to deal with the climate crisis in a serious way. So this is what you're up against when it comes to the court, yet Biden is still against court packing. Also, Democrats, voters in support of expanding the Supreme Court, 62%. Even if the support wasn't there, who cares? Doing the right thing doesn't always have majorities. But here you have still the public on your side. So politically, it's also the right thing to do. Still, Biden unwilling to do it. And you have this piece in Reuters, Biden unlikely to meet bold Democrat demands after abortion ruling. Sources say, here is a quote. Here is their reasoning for why they are not going to fight. Biden and officials are concerned that more radical moves, what they call radical, I call rational, radical moves would be politically polarizing ahead of November's midterm elections, undermine public trust in institutions like the Supreme Court, which is absolutely insane considering support for the Supreme Court is at an all-time low, or lack strong legal footing, sources inside and outside the White House say. This is completely insane. This is garbage politics. These Democratic leaders have no idea what the hell they are doing. They are suppressing the vote by not fighting. Democrats win when turnout is high. Turnout is high when you actually have that 40% of people who don't normally vote when they come out to vote. They will not come out to vote for your party if you are not showing there is any difference when you're in power. You have to be willing to fight. That's how you get these people out to vote for you. Now, yes, some people now may be feared into voting for Democrats as a defense mechanism, and that's good in the sense that more people should vote. I'm in support of more people voting. But if you want the larger chunk to vote, the ones that don't normally vote, you have to actually fight for human rights. If you're unwilling to do that, you're not going to get the people that you need. And you have to hope that there's going to be enough people that are going to flip over from like Trump to vote for Democrats to win. And that is a massive bet to make. So there are, the occasional individuals, someone like Dave Portnoy, who I think runs like a sports website. He was a Trump voter. And now he says he's going to vote for Democrats because of this issue. Those people exist, yes, but a lot more people that don't normally vote exist. You have to be able to reach out to those people. Now let's get to Elie Mystal. Here he is on C-SPAN discussing essentially how weak Biden is on this issue.
So when Biden says, as he has said, that he will not call for ending the filibuster or for expanding the Supreme Court, what he's saying is that he will do nothing. Because unless you eliminate the filibuster and codify Roe v. Wade as a federal law, and unless you expand the Supreme Court so that the justices who just overturned 50 years of precedent don't turn around and overturn an act of Congress before breakfast, which they will, then you get nothing. The conservative Supreme Court has proven itself. It has said that it does not care about past legal precedent. It does not care about rights unless white men gave you those rights in the 19th century. That's what the conservatives are doing right now. So either you accept that, as Biden apparently is willing to, and you get nothing, or you do what's necessary to reform the court, to reform the Senate, to reform our politics so that rights can be protected.
All right, so shortly I'm going to get to another clip showing Elie Mystal discussing why he thinks Biden is unwilling to move when it comes to the Supreme Court, and I find his position on that to be fairly interesting. But before I get there, this is exactly right. This is why you simply can't codify Roe into law and think that everything's fine. You need to have the court reformed as well. If you are unwilling to add to the court, if you're unwilling to reform the court in any way, if you're unwilling to reform these institutions in any way at all, then what you pass legislatively means nothing, as it can simply be overturned. You have to be willing to fight on all fronts. And again, this is under his legal authority, his lawful authority. He said he's going to do whatever he can legally, his lawful power to do whatever he can. He is not doing anything. So unless you're willing to fight, even Republicans break the rules to win. Democrats aren't even willing to use the rules that they have to fight. Like, you can't expect to win a fight for human rights, for environmental rights, for workers' rights, if you aren't even willing to use the rules that exist to win the fight, especially when the other side is breaking the rules. Now, also on, putting aside the court, putting aside Congress, Biden, with his own power, executive power, can be doing a lot more in regards to this issue, in particular on the Hyde Amendment. So the Hyde Amendment bars federal funds from going to funding abortions, yet there are ways to work around this. So Elie Mystal, again, this is his piece in The Nation. He says the Hyde Amendment is not an excuse to do nothing to protect abortion rights. So to be clear, it bars Medicaid from funding abortion services. But based on the Hyde Amendment alone, Biden, Democrats can still work around it or work with it to administer abortion services on a national level. And he goes through other examples here, including using the military to do it, or repealing the Hyde Amendment is another option. Ignore the Hyde Amendment. So, and he goes through, precedent for this sort of action as well. I'll link to his piece below the video on YouTube under sources. But he goes on to say here, if you don't like my many arguments about how the federal government can get around the Hyde Amendment, you should also be calling for Joe Biden to flatly say he will not sign a 2023 budget that includes it, instead of, caving like he did last year. So, again, showing you how Biden, with his own power, has continued to capitulate to Republicans instead of actually using his power to stand up for human rights. Now, let me get to why Elie Mystal thinks that Biden is unwilling to move on the issue of reforming the Supreme Court.
based on his 30, 40 years of public service. Joe Biden and many Democrats are institutionalists. They believe institutions themselves have power and value. They believe that the institutions alone will save us. As long as we have good people running the institutions, they believe that that is enough. So even when you pass a constitutional amendment, certainly when you pass a congressional act, the Supreme Court has the ability to cut those acts out at the knees. And as long as you respect that institutional ability to do that, they will always cut those laws off at the knees. We need to reform the institution, not rely upon it. And that's the difference between kind of a Joe Biden and many kind of centrist establishment Democrats and people like me, reformers, who want to change the institutions as opposed to simply hoping that they do good.
Now, while this doesn't explain every issue with the Democratic Party, with Biden, with Democratic leadership, I do think this is definitely a part of the issue that is often unexplored, is this love of these institutions without understanding the inherent undemocratic aspect of them, be it the Supreme Court, be it the Electoral College, be it the Senate. These are all aspects of American politics that are inherently undemocratic, do not represent the majorities of people. Yet they continue operating the way they do because the Democratic Party is unwilling to challenge them, to reform them, unwilling to even discuss the potential of reform. So as long as you have people like Joe Biden, Pelosi, Schumer in positions of power in the party, nothing is going to change. These people need to get primaried out of the way, including Joe Biden. If he runs for a second term, Jesus Christ, he needs to be challenged. There needs to be a robust primary challenge from a number of people, make it a legitimate process. The more people you have at the beginning of that primary, the more legitimate it seems to challenge a sitting president. Have a number of people step in to challenge him. He has to be removed from office. He is garbage, clearly unwilling to fight for the best interests of people. And at this point, it's affecting the world. When you have something like the EPA now, even unwilling, or not unwilling, but now handicapped in their ability to deal with the climate crisis because of this recent ruling from the Supreme Court. These are issues that are affecting everybody.